I'm Jennifer. I've been wanting to make a video for a while now to introduce myself to everybody, but I always come up with some kind of lame excuse like I'm having a bad hair day or something. So I figured, you know what, just suck it up, put a hat on or something. So, um, first of all, I was born in the late 60s and I was a very difficult baby from day one. As soon as my parents brought me home from the hospital, I was trouble. Cried all the time. And I know most babies cry. I mean, that's how they communicate, right? Well, I cried all the time. I mean, they couldn't do anything to calm me down. And after some time, they finally found this magical elixir at the local pharmacy called paregoric. It's no longer something you can get over the counter, but back in those days, it's what they used to help me sleep and so that they could get some sleep. But the active ingredient in paregoric is actually opium. Interesting. So anyway, the fighting with my parents was just completely out of control. I was one of those bratty, ornery kids that, you see at the grocery store that parents can't seem to control. Every Sunday, my father would grab one arm and leg, and my mother would grab one arm and leg, and they'd stuff me into a dress and drag me off to church, and I'd be wailing the whole time. And my screaming didn't stop when I was in class either. In fact, this continued all the way through elementary school. It was a constant fight, a constant battle to get me dressed every day and ready for school. And then I'd get to school and get in a lot of trouble with my teachers because I couldn't sit still or I had other kind of behavior problems. Finally, I'm going to fast forward about 40 years, I was diagnosed with something called sensory processing disorder. That diagnosis made my whole life start to make sense. Basically, what sensory processing disorder means that my brain has a hard time filtering and understanding incoming sensory data. For example, all the sounds in the room, the clock ticking, the refrigerator running, people walking across the floor, all those everyday sounds aren't filtered out of the background in my brain. Everything just kind of blends together and it becomes very confusing. And textures do the same thing to me. I'll try to explain how my body reacts to sounds and textures and other sensory data. Pretend like you're sitting at home just watching TV or enjoying your dinner with your family, and then all of a sudden, somebody bursts through your front door, and they've got a gun in your face. Imagine what your body would go through. Suddenly, you're alert. Your brain is racing for what's going on. It's scrambling for ideas. It's scrambling to try and determine what's going on. Your heart is pounding. It's racing. You're in a state of panic, and you're struggling for anything you can do to stay alive. And the threat of that guy in your face, your life is just moments away from ending. And that rush and that hysteria of what's going through your body and those feelings you feel. That's exactly how my body responds to simple, everyday, normal things. For example, keyboards typing, mouses clicking, heels on a wooden or cement floor, a fork on a plate, cardboard, and newsprint, and other wooden type textures. The list could go on. There's hundreds and hundreds of things that really don't make any sense, and I know they're not a threat to me, but my body responds just as if there's a threat to my survival. And now that I'm in my mid-40s, I'm trying to learn ways to cope and deal with it, but it's still a difficult problem. And I still wrestle with sleeping at night and, trying to get through my day without some kind of, alarm going off. So that's kind of underlying who I am and how my body and mind responds to the world. In fact, my little hoodie sweatshirt here is going to come in handy today because I'm going to the movies with my mom and I have to block out the squeak of the popcorn. I know it's crazy, but it's just kind of this world that I live in. And I believed a lot of really messed up things. And because of my struggles at school and my struggles at home, just with the SPD, I had a very warped worldview, to say the least. Between the ages of 6 and 16, I had multiple instances of sexual abuse happen in my life, unfortunately. 3 different people, 3 completely different scenarios, and I won't go into the details here, but I'll be talking more about how I've dealt with some of that stuff in future videos. But I'll just say that it was on top of the confusion and the anger I already felt and the discomfort in the world. When things like that happened to me during that time, it made me feel very used and abused and taken advantage of, and it planted seeds of bitterness and anger that just began to bloom, ugly thorn. Ugh. So by the time I was 14, 15, I started experimenting with alcohol and smoking pot and doing some of those things. And you know what? It really seemed to help me a lot. And I really enjoyed it a lot. And for the first time in my life, I started to feel what I thought was normal. I felt relaxed. I felt more at peace. And I thought, you know, I don't know why people say these things are so bad for you. They seem to be helping me. They helped me come out of my shell. I didn't seem to be as, you know, on edge all the time. So I had an excuse, I thought, to use and consume as much as I wanted to. Well, it wasn't long before drugs and alcohol took over my life. And quite honestly, by the time I was 16, I was using almost all day long every day. I was sneaking thermoses full of vodka to school and sipping on it during class. I was sneaking into the back art room or to the meat locker at my job where I bagged groceries, and I was getting high. And by the time I went to college, it was just a total wreck. I was drinking 5ths of liquor almost every day, and I started doing cocaine and smoking crack and doing some other stupid things, and it just spiraled completely out of control. And what started off with a very bad excuse, thinking that this makes me feel better, I can cope better in this world using these things, quickly grabbed a hold of me and almost choked the life out of me. And for 10 long, horrible years, I spent wrestling those demons. And multiple intervention attempts were made into my life. My parents tried their best to help me. The school guidance counselors, the school principal got involved. My Sunday school teacher. I can't tell you how many times I was attempted to be rescued, and everybody had the same message for me. They kept trying to tell me that Jesus wanted a relationship with me and that if I would just give my life to Christ, I would be okay. The same thought kept going through my head. If only you knew what I'd been through, you wouldn't be saying that. I was in church my entire life. I had heard about this Jesus my whole life, and I never doubted that he existed. I've always believed there was a God. I always believed what I heard was true. But I just felt like he was angry with me or he was disgusted with me. And after things happened to me, I felt gross and unclean, and I knew God was holy. I'd been hearing about his holiness and how we needed to obey God and all these things, and I was completely incapable of obeying. I couldn't even obey my parents. I seemed to struggle, so I just believed that I was unsavable, that he was up there, but I couldn't believe he really wanted a relationship with me. I mean, that's just church speak, right? Surely I'm just kind of on the fringe. I'm out there. I'm a little bit too messed up for that. Besides, all my human relationships had been strained at best, and I didn't really want to put myself in the position of being in a relationship with somebody else who was going to constantly be disappointed with me. I just kept God at arm's length, and while I believed he was real, I just couldn't commit my life to him. I couldn't enter into a relationship with him because I just felt completely unworthy. The more I tried to hold on to and control my life and control my environment and control the way I felt in the world, the worse and worse and worse and worse things got. I eventually ended up pregnant. And I know how that happened, but we won't go into those details. But when I ended up pregnant, I, for the first time, started to sober up a little bit. Not out of my own will, but because God is awesome. For some reason, as my body was growing this child inside, I began to be extremely nauseated by the toxic substances that I had been taking in every day. So just by sheer miracle of the birth process in and of itself is what woke me up for the first time. So now I'm sober for the first time. I'm not married. I'm pregnant and I'm scared to death. I don't know how in the world I'm possibly going to raise a child when I can't even take care of myself very well. I was working 3 jobs and I was going to do everything that I possibly could to do the right thing. And when I was about 5 months pregnant, I finally decided to go see a doctor for the first time just to make sure that everything's going well. And during my visit, he did an ultrasound, and the doctor told me, you have this condition where the placenta's in the wrong place, and you could start hemorrhaging at any minute, and your life and your baby's life is at risk. You can't be working. In fact, you need to stop all work immediately. You need to be on bed rest 24/7 for the remainder of your term. I was completely shocked. What do you mean? I can't work. If I can't work, how in the world am I going to provide for my baby? So I was terrified. And I began to just cry out to God. I can remember standing there in my little shack of a house. I didn't have a refrigerator. I didn't have a stove. I didn't have any air conditioning. It was a shack to say the least. I was so poor. It was just terrible. I was living off of ramen noodles and tuna fish, basically. And I was like, God, you've taken everything away from me. I cannot do this alone. What am I going to do? Right about that time, somebody knocked on my front door. I'll go to the front door, and this very angry man is standing on my porch. And he looks at me and he says, lady, you better get these weeds in your yard mowed or you're going to be evicted. The weeds in my front yard were literally probably waist high. I didn't even have a lawnmower. And here I am, 5, 6 months pregnant. I don't have a penny to my name. I'm fixing to be evicted anyways because I can no longer pay my bills. And I'm crying out to God, begging him for help. And this man shows up at my door. So I'm like, God, are you serious? Just when I finally am asking you for help, things get even worse. No joke. 5 minutes later, somebody drives up my driveway. And they pull a lawnmower out of the back of the truck. And they said, hey, we just happened to be driving down the road. We saw a garage sale. We saw this lawnmower. We knew it was your birthday. Happy birthday. And they just dropped off the lawnmower and left. And I thought, well, that was pretty strange. I mean, the timing of that event was pretty coincidental. Okay, that's kind of weird. Here I am, 6 months pregnant. I may have a lawnmower now, but how in the world am I going to accomplish this? The doctor told me not to even work. But I figured, okay, well, I'll just get out there and I'll go really slow. I'll make one pass across the yard and then I'll sit down and rest and I've got this. I can do it. The job would have been better accomplished with a machete. I mean, honestly, I couldn't make it 2 feet and I was just devastated with how hard the job was going to be. So I turned the lawnmower off and I'm literally standing in the weeds in my front yard and I look up at the sky again. I know tears are pouring down my face at this point. I said, you've got to be kidding me. This is how you want to care for me. This is how you're going to provide for me. I'm trying to ask you for help and things just keep getting worse. As soon as I look down, there's about a 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy just standing there. I don't even know where he came from. I'd never seen him before. And he looks at me and he goes, ma'am, if it's all right with you, I'd like to mow your yard. Okay, you can mow my yard. God, I know you're trying to pursue me. You have proven that you can provide for me. Why? Why me? I'm no good. And I just felt like he was saying, you know what? I've got a plan for you. If you would just let go, you're not in control. I'm here. I want to help you because I love you. Still struggled with the doubt and confusion. But the fact that he was showing off for me and he was providing for me in such a strange and miraculous way, he definitely had my attention. Well, by the time my son was born, I had an emergency C-section. I actually had overdone it a little bit trying to do some things and trying to work, and I ended up bleeding ahead of time and rushing to the hospital and having an emergency C-section. In fact, I didn't even see my son for the first 24 hours because I was in the ICU bleeding to death. But the doctors kept me alive, and I managed to make it, and I can remember just praying out in the emergency room, you know, God, keep me alive. I want to be the best mom I can possibly be. Please, I promise to get my life in order. I promise to get my life in order. Just keep me alive. I still kept hoping his father would eventually be there for us and be the means to provide for us. And as each day went by and each night went by and things were not happening like I wanted them to happen, and we weren't being taken care of the way I wanted to be taken care of, and I just couldn't quite make ends meet. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just crying out to God, God, why won't he help us? Why won't he provide for us? And God said, but I'm the one who can provide for you. Why are you waiting on somebody else? I'm the one who loves you. Love me? Why? I mean, I'm no good. I mean, you know what I've done. You know I've had a child. I'm not even married. You know I've messed up. Why do you want a relationship with me? Because I've got plans for you and your son. Me? Why would you have plans for me? I mean, I don't know anything. I'm a complete mess. Right about that time, boom, boom, boom. My boyfriend, my son's father, stumbles through the door. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he's obviously intoxicated. And we get into a fight. And it's not a very nice fight. Well, about an hour into this terrible fight, comes another bang on my door. As soon as I open the door, there's 3 cops standing out there. And these cops come into my living room, and they ask me what's going on, why is the disturbance. They've had several people call and complain. And I start to tell the cops that we were fighting because I have a 3-month-old son in the back room, and I'm doing everything I can to try and provide for him, but I need some help, and my boyfriend's not helping. And this cop gets in my face, and he goes, ma'am, even if he doesn't do the right thing, you still have to. And it was like a light bulb went on for the first time, and I realized, you know what? That's a very good point. Why am I placing all my hope in some guy? Not to mention, as the cop is standing there in my face yelling at me, I know there are drugs in the cabinets behind them. In fact, enough drugs because we're selling drugs. We've got piles of cocaine and marijuana stuffed in the cabinets for distribution. So if the cops even look around a little bit, I'm getting locked up right now. And the cop looks at me. He hasn't discovered the drugs yet, but he looks at me and he goes, if we get called back here again, you could lose your son. You could lose your son, and you might never see him again. Ma'am, you've got to do the right thing here. And I knew that I was this close away from losing him. And the cops walked out of my apartment, and I decided once and for all, I have to give up here. I walked to the back bedroom. I got my baby. I got a small diaper bag and a few things of clothes for me and him. and I walked about 1.5 miles to the closest payphone. By this time, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I called my parents, and I said, I need you to come get me. And they're like, are you okay? It's so early. Jen, what's wrong? I said, no time to talk. Come and get me right now. It's an emergency. I'll explain everything when you get here. I began to have a very real conversation with God in my heart, and I knew that he had been pursuing me for a long time, and I knew that it was time to give up, and I knew that I couldn't do it, and I couldn't put my trust in myself. I couldn't put my trust in others, that the only person that I could really count on was him. He kept showing up. He kept proving himself to me, even though I didn't deserve it, and I realized I need to give my life to Christ. And for the first time, I finally relented. I finally said, I surrender. I don't know what you're up to. I don't know why you want somebody like me. But the fact that you want me exactly how I am, the fact that you love me anyways, nobody else can provide that. Nobody else has ever given me that except you. So I don't know what you're up to, but I'm yours. And that was the smartest decision I ever made in my life. I wish I could just tell you in an instant how awesome the last 20 years have been since I made that decision. It hasn't been an easy 20 years, but it's been an awesome 20 years. God has continued to show up over and over and over and over and over again in my life. He completely transformed my life. I've been drug-free for 21 years now. So there is power in healing and putting your life and trust into him. I am living witness to that. This body went through awful cravings. It went through an awful time trying to readjust to a healthy lifestyle, and just learning to breathe fresh air was a whole new experience. But I've made it, and through the power of Christ. He also completely transformed my relationship with my parents. I mean, there were days and years there where we hated each other. At least I hated them. I mean, I couldn't understand them. I really, truly thought they hated me. But God has completely restored that relationship, and we have an awesome relationship now. I spend so much time with him. I'm so grateful that I've had the last 20 years to heal our relationship together, and they're still alive, and I still have time to grow and bond and spend time with him. They've been very close, helping me raise my son and be a part of his life, and he's 21 years old now, and he's an incredible young man. I couldn't be more blessed with an incredible young man than he is. I mean, he leads worship at my church. These are plans I could have never pulled off myself. But when God told me, I've got plans for you and I've got plans for your son, he wasn't kidding. He wasn't messing around. I get to go into prisons, and I meet with inmates a lot, and I hear their stories, and I can totally relate to their drug addictions and selling addictions, and I can relate to people who have mental disorders and ADHD and OCD and all of those things, because my SPD is very similar, and it creates a lot of daily challenges for me. And believe me, in my weakness, I must depend on Christ at all. So the way my life has turned out is by no means because I'm smart enough or good enough or able enough, but because I am surrendered enough that he is able to do incredible things through me. And I just want so bad for anybody out there who happens to be watching this to know, if you're hurting, if you've got everyday struggles like I do, God doesn't make mistakes. And he certainly hasn't made a mistake with you. And he loves you and he adores you. And we've got to stop listening to what the world says about us. We've got to stop interpreting the world's actions to mean that's who we are. If we're having trouble understanding something, or we've had bad things happen to us, it's very easy to have a very warped identity. But we've got to believe what Christ says about us. We can never be good enough to earn our way into heaven. There's nothing we can do. But the good news is God solved that problem for us. God provided a way for us to be healed. God provided a way for us to be reconciled to him. God provided a way for us to have eternal life in heaven. God provided a way for us to thrive and be used and be useful and be productive and to be happy. And if you want abundant peace and joy, despite your circumstances, I'm here to tell you, I've witnessed it firsthand. That happens through complete surrender to Christ Jesus. My prayer for you is that no matter what you're going through, that you just talk to him, cry out to him. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to comfort you, wants to heal you, wants to transform you. He can do these things in your life. He's done it for me, and he loves you enough that he's been pursuing you, and he wants a relationship with you. All you have to do is trust him, get to know him. Just admit all this junk that you've been through. Just talk to him about it. That's what repentance is. It's saying, you know what? Here's who I truly am, and I'm messed up, and there's no way I can make it without you. It's relinquishing the reins. It's giving him control. It's saying, I don't know how in the world I'm going to overcome addiction. I have no idea how I'm going to overcome these feelings of guilt and a shame for what I've been through. But he knows how. He knows how to get you through those things. You just got to let him do it. You just got to get out of your own way and surrender and get to know him. The more you get to know him, the more you're going to see. I can honestly say now that I consider it joy that I've been through trials and sufferings and hardships and misunderstandings. It's because I've been so poor that I know God is my provider. It's because I've been abused and ashamed and gone through some horrible things that I've seen God be my defender and my vindicator. I believe sometimes we go through things just so that he can get our attention and so that we can put our dependence on him instead. And I can consider it joy now because I've seen this side of God. People come up to me all the time and they say, wow, I've never had a story like yours. I haven't overcome drug addiction, or I haven't had anything terrible happen. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't regret what I've been through anymore. I quit living as a victim because I've got somebody who's helped me live in victory. And I'm no longer wounded. I'm a warrior. See, because of all that I've been through, I have pretty thick skin now. And when the next trial comes, I'm able to get through those trials so much easier now. And there's always something that good comes from it. God has taken every single little challenge or difficulty that I have, or every situation I've been through, and he's turned it around for good. You would be amazed. And I hope in future videos to be able to tell you some of those stories so you can see specifically some of the things that I've learned and how he's used those trials for his good. I get really excited because I've just witnessed some incredible things, and I just wanted to share that with you. So I hope you can relate, and if you know somebody that's going through a tough time and you think my video will be inspiring or encouraging to them, please feel free to share it. I hope to post some more in the future because I'm excited about what God's doing, and I really want to encourage you and help you find strength and courage and the ability to just trust him for everything. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.